The gardener warned the millionaire about her friend. The following week, a luxury car appeared at her house. The morning sun cast long shadows across the meticulously manicured lawn of the Richardson estate, where 26-year-old Sofia Martinez worked diligently among the roses. Her skilled hands moved with practiced precision as she carefully pruned the delicate blooms, her mind wandering to the dream that had brought her to America 5 years ago. A degree in environmental science from her homeland of Mexico now seemed worlds away from her current position as a gardener. But Sofia knew better than to underestimate the strange ways life could unfold. The estate belonged to Marcus Richardson, co-founder and CEO of Innovate Tech Solutions, one of Silicon Valley's fastest-growing technology companies. From her quiet corner of the garden, Sofia often observed the steady stream of luxury vehicles that pulled into the circular driveway, carrying executives and business partners to what she imagined were world-changing meetings. Today was different, though. There was an unusual energy in the air, an electricity that seemed to hum through the estate's modern glass walls. The upcoming merger with Global Dynamics had everyone on edge, especially Marcus and his lifelong best friend and business partner, James Cooper. Sofia looked up from her work as another sleek vehicle approached the house. James Cooper stepped out, his tailored suit as impeccable as always, though something about his demeanor seemed off. She had worked at the estate long enough to notice the subtle shifts in the regular visitors' moods, and James's typically confident stride appeared slightly hesitant. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper," Sofia called out politely, as was her custom. James barely acknowledged her with a distracted nod, his attention focused on his phone as he rushed inside. Sofia returned to her roses, but her concentration was broken by the sound of raised voices drifting from an open window above. The home's modern architecture, while stunning, sometimes carried sound in unexpected ways. "Marcus, we need to finalize this deal before the end of the month," James's voice carried clearly. "The board is getting antsy, and Global Dynamics won't wait forever." "I understand the pressure, James," Marcus responded, his usually calm voice tinged with stress. "But rushing into this without proper due diligence would be irresponsible. We've built this company from nothing. We owe it to our employees to do this right." Sofia didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the conversation captured her attention. She had always admired Marcus Richardson, not just for his success, but for his genuine concern for others. Unlike many wealthy employers she had encountered, Marcus took time to learn everyone's names, from the cleaning staff to the security team. He had even remembered her birthday last month, surprising her with a generous bonus and a handwritten card. The discussion above continued, growing more heated. "Sometimes I wonder if you've gone soft," James said, his tone sharp. "The Marcus I knew in college would have jumped at this opportunity without hesitation." "The Marcus you knew in college didn't have 5,000 employees depending on him," came the measured reply. "Taking risks is one thing, James. Being reckless is another." Sofia tried to focus on her gardening, but her mind kept returning to the conversation. Something in James's voice bothered her, a note of barely contained frustration that seemed out of place for someone on the verge of what the local papers were calling the tech deal of the decade. As the morning wore on, Sofia moved to tend the herb garden near the pool house. The estate's grounds were extensive, requiring constant attention to maintain their showcase appearance. She was proud of her work here, having transformed the gardens from merely beautiful to truly exceptional during her tenure. The herb garden, in particular, was her special project. Marcus had given her free rein to design and plant it after discovering her background in environmental science. The sound of footsteps on gravel drew her attention. James Cooper was walking quickly toward the pool house, his phone pressed to his ear. He seemed unaware of Sofia's presence behind the tall rosemary bushes. "Listen, everything is proceeding according to plan," he spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Once the merger is announced, the stock will spike. That's when we'll make our move. Marcus won't know what hit him until it's too late." Sofia froze, her pruning shears suspended in mid-air. She hardly dared to breathe as James continued his conversation. "The offshore accounts are ready. Once we trigger the clause in Section 7, control of the company will transfer immediately." "Yes, I know Marcus trusts me completely. That's what makes this perfect." A chill ran down Sofia's spine despite the warm California sun. She had just overheard something she was never meant to hear, something that could destroy not only a successful company but a friendship she had witnessed firsthand over the past 3 years. As James's footsteps retreated toward the main house, Sophia remained motionless among the herbs, her mind racing. What should she do with this information? Marcus Richardson had always been kind to her. But would he believe the word of a gardener over his lifelong best friend? And if she spoke up, what would it cost her? The weight of the knowledge pressed down on her like a physical burden. As she finally resumed her work, her hands trembled slightly. The pristine garden suddenly felt like a stage set for a drama she never wanted to be part of. And Sofia Martinez found herself cast in a role she never anticipated. The accidental keeper of a secret that could change everything. The next few days were torture for Sophia. Every time she trimmed a hedge or watered the flower beds, the weight of James Cooper's overheard conversation pressed heavily on her conscience. She watched as Marcus Richardson went about his daily routine, completely unaware of his friend's impending betrayal, and each friendly smile he directed her way only intensified her inner turmoil. During her lunch break, Sophia sat in her usual spot behind the greenhouse, picking at her homemade sandwich, while scrolling through news articles about Innovate Tech on her phone. The company's success story was legendary in Silicon Valley. 2 college roommates who started coding in their dorm room had built a technology empire worth billions. The photos showed Marcus and James through the years. Graduation day, the opening of their first office, the IPO celebration. In every image, they stood shoulder to shoulder, grinning with the easy confidence of best friends conquering the world together. How could he do this? Sophia muttered to herself, closing the browser in frustration. She understood ambition. It had driven her to leave her home country in search of better opportunities. But the level of betrayal she had witnessed seemed unfathomable. That afternoon, while tending to the indoor plants in the mansion's sunroom, Sophia overheard another conversation that made her blood run cold. James was in the adjacent study, speaking in hushed tones on his phone again. "The lawyers have reviewed everything. Once the merger announcement goes public, we'll have a 48-hour window to execute the plan. Marcus's shares will be diluted to nothing. Yes, I understand the risks, but trust me, he won't see it coming. 20 years of friendship means he trusts me blindly." Sophia's hand trembled as she watered a peace lily, causing water to splash onto the marble floor. The sound made James pause his conversation briefly, and she held her breath until he resumed speaking in an even lower voice. Later that evening, as Sophia was gathering her tools to leave for the day, she nearly collided with Marcus in the garden path. He steadied her with a gentle hand on her shoulder, causing her to drop her pruning shears. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Richardson," she stammered, bending to retrieve the fallen tool. "No harm done, Sophia," he smiled warmly. "And please, I've told you before, call me Marcus." He paused, studying her face with concern. "Is everything all right? You seem troubled lately." Sophia's heart raced. This was her opportunity. She could tell him everything right now. But as she opened her mouth to speak, doubt crept in. What if James found out she had exposed him? Would she lose her job? Worse, would anyone believe her? I'm fine," she managed, forcing a smile. "Just worried about some of the roses. The heat wave next week might affect the new bushes." Marcus nodded, though his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "You know, Sophia, I've always appreciated your dedication to these gardens. When I hired you 3 years ago, I knew you were overqualified, but you've transformed this place into something extraordinary. If you ever need anything at all, my door is always open." The sincerity in his voice made Sophia's chest tighten with guilt. She watched as he walked back to the house where James was waiting on the terrace with a stack of documents and his usual charming smile. That night, Sophia barely slept. In her modest apartment across town, she paced between her small kitchen and living room, playing out various scenarios in her mind. She could anonymously email Marcus the information, but would that seem credible? She could approach James directly and confront him, but the thought made her shudder. Or she could simply keep quiet and watch a good man lose everything he had built. The next morning, Sophia arrived at work earlier than usual. The gardens were peaceful in the pre-dawn light, and she found herself drawn to the rose garden where she had first overheard James's betrayal. As she worked, a plan began to form in her mind. She couldn't remain silent, but she needed to be smart about how she handled this information. During her morning break, Sophia used her phone to research business terminology she had heard in James's conversations, terms like share dilution and hostile takeover. The more she understood, the more alarming the situation became. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, and the livelihoods of thousands of employees. A notification popped up on her phone. A breaking news alert about Innovate Tech's impending merger with Global Dynamics. The stock market was already reacting to the rumors, and analysts were predicting a historic deal. Sophia's stomach churned as she realized the timeline was accelerating. As she watched another sleek car pull up to the mansion, carrying what appeared to be more lawyers or executives, Sophia made her decision. She couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent. Marcus Richardson deserved to know the truth, and she would find a way to tell him, even if it cost her everything she had worked for. She pulled out her notebook and began writing down everything she had overheard, including dates and specific phrases James had used. If she was going to do this, she needed to be thorough and precise. The gardens had given her an unexpected window into a world of high-stakes business and betrayal, and now she had to decide how to use that knowledge. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Sophia looked up at the mansion's gleaming windows, knowing that behind them, the drama she had uncovered was moving toward its climax. She was just a gardener, but she held information that could change everything. The question was no longer whether she would speak up, but how and when to do it. The following morning brought a heavy marine layer rolling in from the bay, shrouding the Richardson estate in a blanket of fog that matched Sophia's uncertainty. She arrived at work, clutching a sealed envelope containing her carefully documented notes about James's conversations, along with a letter explaining everything she had witnessed. The mansion was unusually quiet for a weekday morning. As Sophia made her rounds through the garden, she noticed Marcus's Tesla was missing from its usual spot in the circular driveway. Her heart sank. Today was supposed to be the day she would finally speak up. Looking for someone. Sophia startled at the sound of James Cooper's voice behind her. She quickly tucked the envelope deeper into her work jacket pocket. "Good morning, Mr. Cooper. I was just checking if Mr. Richardson needed anything for the garden before the merger meetings this week." James studied her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Marcus is in San Francisco today. Merger preparations." He paused, adjusting his designer watch. "You know, Sophia, I've noticed you spending a lot of time near the house lately, especially around the study windows." Sophia's mouth went dry, but years of dealing with difficult situations had taught her to maintain her composure. "The new climbing roses need extra attention, Mr. Cooper. I want them to look perfect for the celebration after the merger." He nodded slowly, but his eyes remained cold. "Just remember, garden staff should focus on the gardens. We wouldn't want anyone getting distracted from their duties." The threat was subtle, but clear. As James walked away, Sophia's hands trembled as she pruned the roses, but not from fear, from determination. His attempt at intimidation only confirmed that she needed to act quickly. During her lunch break, Sophia called Marcus's office, only to be told by his assistant that he was in meetings all day. Desperate, she decided to do something she'd never done before. She drove to Innovate Tech's headquarters in Palo Alto. The gleaming glass building stretched toward the sky, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the warm gardens she was used to. Sophia felt out of place in her work clothes as she approached the security desk, but she straightened her spine and spoke with confidence. "I need to see Mr. Richardson. It's urgent." The security guard looked skeptical. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I'm his gardener, Sophia Martinez. Please, it's very important." After several phone calls and what felt like an eternity of waiting, Marcus's assistant, Claire, came to the lobby. Sophia recognized her voice from their phone conversations over the years. "Sophia? Marcus is in back-to-back meetings about the merger, but I can pass along a message." Sophia clutched the envelope in her pocket. "I need to speak with him directly. It's about James Cooper and the merger. Please, it can't wait." Something in Sophia's tone must have conveyed her urgency. because Claire's professional smile faltered slightly. "Wait here," she said, disappearing back into the elevator. 15 minutes later, Sophia found herself being ushered into a sleek conference room on the top floor. The view of the bay was spectacular, but she barely noticed it, her heart pounding as she waited. Finally, the door opened, and Marcus walked in, looking concerned. "Sophia?" Claire said it was urgent. "Is everything all right at the house?" Sophia took a deep breath and pulled out the envelope. "Mr. Richardson, Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I need you to understand that I'm only doing this because I respect you and everything you've built." She handed him the envelope with slightly shaking hands. 3 days ago, I overheard Mr. Cooper on the phone in the garden. He's planning to betray you through the merger. I wrote down everything I heard, including dates and specific phrases he used. Marcus's expression remained neutral as he opened the envelope and began reading. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the subtle sound of paper rustling as he turned pages. "These are serious allegations, Sophia," he finally said, his voice carefully controlled. "You understand what you're saying?" "Yes, sir. I know it sounds incredible, but I heard him clearly. He has offshore accounts set up, and something about triggering a clause in Section 7 of the merger agreement." "He said," Sophia paused, then continued softly, "he said you trust him blindly because of your 20 years of friendship." Marcus sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs, still holding Sophia's notes. She could see the emotion fighting its way through his professional facade. "Why are you telling me this? You must realize how risky this is for you." Sophia straightened her shoulders. "Because it's right. Because you've always treated everyone at the estate with respect, from the cleaning staff to the security team. Because I've seen how much you care about your employees. And because I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent and watched someone destroy all of that." Marcus stood and walked to the window, staring out at the fog that was finally beginning to lift over the bay. When he turned back to Sophia, his expression had hardened into something she'd never seen before. "I need you to tell me everything you heard. Every detail. And Sophia, from this moment on, you need to act completely normal at the estate. Can you do that?" Sophia nodded, relief flooding through her. He believed her. "One more thing," Marcus added, his voice grave. "This conversation never happened. For your own safety, tell no one about what you've shared with me. I'll handle it from here." As Sophia left Innovate Tech's headquarters that afternoon, she felt lighter despite the weight of Marcus's warning. She had done the right thing, but as she drove back to the estate to finish her workday, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real drama was just beginning. The next week at the Richardson estate felt like walking on eggshells. Sophia maintained her regular routine, but every interaction with James Cooper filled her with anxiety. She noticed subtle changes in Marcus's behavior too. His usual warm greetings had become distracted nods, and the light in his home office burned late into the night. One morning, while Sophia was trimming the hedges near the pool house, she noticed an unfamiliar woman walking the grounds with Marcus. The woman's sharp attire and calculating gaze suggested she wasn't another merger consultant. "The gardens provide excellent cover," the woman remarked, making notes on her tablet. "Multiple sight lines, plenty of hiding spots. Your gardener's design choices inadvertently created perfect surveillance opportunities." Sophia pretended to focus on her work, but her ears perked up at the mention of her role. "Diana Blackwood is the best private investigator in Silicon Valley," she overheard Marcus explain quietly. "Her firm specializes in corporate espionage and fraud detection. If what you're suggesting is happening, she'll find the evidence." Sophia's heart raced. Marcus was taking action, but discreetly. She continued her work, moving slowly to catch more of their conversation. "The offshore accounts you mentioned," Diana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've already identified several shell companies in the Cayman Islands. The timing of their creation coincides perfectly with the merger negotiations." Marcus's sharp intake of breath was audible even from Sophia's position. "And you're certain they're connected to—" "Mr. Richardson," James's voice suddenly boomed across the garden, causing everyone to startle. He approached with his usual confident stride, but Sophia noticed a slight tension in his shoulders as he spotted Diana. "James," Marcus recovered quickly, his poker face impressive. "Meet Diana Blackwood, our new security consultant. With the merger approaching, we can't be too careful about corporate espionage." James's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course. Although I thought we agreed to run all merger-related decisions past each other. Just taking initiative, old friend. You've been so busy with the legal team, I didn't want to bother you with security details." The tension in the air was palpable as the two men locked eyes. Sophia busied herself with the hedges, hardly daring to breathe. "Speaking of the legal team," James continued, breaking the silence, "they need you in the study. There's an issue with Section 7 of the agreement." Sophia's pruning shears nearly slipped from her grasp. Section 7, the exact clause she'd overheard James discussing in his phone call. "I'll be right there," Marcus replied smoothly. "Diana, please continue your assessment. We'll talk more later." As the men walked away, Diana lingered in the garden, making a show of examining the security cameras mounted on the pool house. When she was sure they were alone, she approached Sophia. "The roses are beautiful," Diana commented casually. "You must spend a lot of time out here." Sophia nodded cautiously. "The gardens require constant attention. I imagine you see and hear quite a lot while you work." Diana's tone was deliberately light, but her eyes were sharp. "If you notice anything unusual in the coming days, here's my card. My team works with complete discretion." Later that afternoon, Sophia was replanting some seasonal flowers near the main house when she noticed a sleek black car pull into the driveway. A man in an expensive suit emerged, carrying a briefcase emblazoned with the logo of one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious law firms. He was escorted directly to Marcus's study. Through the open window, fragments of conversation drifted down to where Sophia worked. "The clause is legally binding, Mr. Richardson. If triggered, it would effectively transfer controlling interest to the minority shareholders within the 48-hour window." "And this was added during the last revision?" Marcus's voice was tight with controlled anger. "Yes, buried in the technical amendments." "Very cleverly done. It would have been easy to miss during a standard review." Sophia's hands trembled as she patted soil around a new petunia. Her warning had set bigger wheels in motion than she'd imagined. The weight of her role in uncovering this conspiracy pressed heavily on her shoulders. That evening, as Sophia was packing up her tools, she noticed James pacing on the terrace, engaged in another heated phone conversation. "Someone's asking questions about the Cayman accounts. No, I don't know who, but Marcus brought in some security consultant today. Listen, we might need to accelerate the timeline." He spotted Sophia and abruptly ended his call. "Still here, Ms. Martinez?" "It's getting rather late." "Just finishing up, Mr. Cooper. The new plantings need extra care in this heat." He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You know, Sophia, loyalty is a rare quality these days. The kind of loyalty that keeps someone in a job they're clearly overqualified for. I've always wondered why someone with your education chose to remain a simple gardener." The threat in his words was subtle but clear. Sophia met his gaze steadily, years of dealing with difficult situations helping her maintain her composure. "I find peace in the gardens, Mr. Cooper. Sometimes the simplest paths bring the most satisfaction." She gathered her tools and walked toward her car, feeling his eyes on her back as she drove home that evening. Sophia's mind raced with the day's development. The investigation was underway. The careful balance of power at the estate was shifting, and she was caught in the middle of a high-stakes game where one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. A series of urgent texts woke Sophia early the next morning. They were from Diana Blackwood, requesting an immediate meeting at a quiet cafe several miles from the estate. Sophia glanced at the time, 6:15 a.m. She had planned to arrive early at work to tend to the new plantings, but something in Diana's messages conveyed the gravity of the situation. The cafe was nearly empty when Sophia arrived, save for a few early morning commuters and Diana, who sat in a corner booth with her tablet and several folders spread before her. A second cup of coffee waited across from her. "Thank you for coming," Diana said, as Sophia slid into the booth. "We've uncovered something significant, and I need to verify some details with you before I present my findings to Marcus." She opened one of the folders and spread out several documents. "These are transaction records from the Cayman Islands accounts. The deposits align perfectly with the dates you overheard James making his calls in the garden. But there's more." She swiped through several screens on her tablet. We've traced a pattern of communications between James and Global Dynamics board members dating back 6 months, long before the merger was publicly discussed. Sophia's hands wrapped around the warm coffee cup as she absorbed the information. What does this mean? It means James has been planning this for at least half a year. The merger isn't just a business deal. It's a Trojan horse. Once it's complete, that clause in Section 7 would allow him to consolidate power and push Marcus out completely. Diana leaned forward. But we need to move carefully. James is smart, and he's already suspicious. Have you noticed anything unusual at the estate lately? Sophia hesitated, then described James's veiled threats and increased presence in the gardens. As she spoke, Diana's expression grew increasingly concerned. Listen to me carefully, Diana said, her voice low. From now on, you need to be extremely cautious. James Cooper didn't build half of Silicon Valley's most successful tech company by being careless. If he suspects you're involved, a notification popped up on Diana's tablet, interrupting her warning. Her eyes widened as she read the message. We need to go. Now. James just called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. He's moving faster than we anticipated. As Sophia drove to work, her mind raced with everything Diana had shared. The morning fog still clung to the hills around the estate, creating an appropriately ominous atmosphere. She was nearly at the garden shed when Marcus's voice called out to her. Sophia, a moment, please. She followed him into the greenhouse, where the humid air and dense foliage provided privacy from prying eyes and ears. Marcus looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. Diana shared her findings with me, he said quietly. I owe you an enormous debt of gratitude. Without your warning, he trailed off, running a hand through his hair. The board meeting this afternoon. James is going to try to force the merger vote ahead of schedule. We're not quite ready, but we have no choice but to play our hand. Sophia's throat tightened with anxiety. What will happen? Either I stop my best friend from stealing my company, or I lose everything I've spent 20 years building. He managed a weak smile. But whatever happens, I want you to know that your position here is secure. In fact, the greenhouse door opened, cutting him off. James stood in the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the morning sun. Having a private meeting with the gardener, Marcus? That's not like you. Just discussing the new landscaping plan for after the merger, Marcus replied smoothly. Sophia has some excellent ideas for the expansion. James's eyes narrowed slightly. The board meeting has been moved up to noon. I trust you'll be prepared? Of course. Some things you can always count on, James, like loyalty and friendship. The sharp edge in Marcus's voice was subtle, but James clearly caught it. He studied them both for a long moment before turning to leave. Indeed. Oh, and Sophia. The roses near my office are looking a bit neglected. Perhaps you should focus on your actual duties. After he left, Marcus touched Sophia's shoulder gently. Be careful today. Stay away from the house during the board meeting. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, call Diana immediately. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of nervous energy. Sophia tried to focus on her gardening tasks, but her mind kept drifting to the drama unfolding inside the mansion. Around noon, a stream of expensive cars began arriving, board members gathering for the emergency meeting. From her position near the rose garden, Sophia watched as James greeted each arrival with his characteristic charm. But there was something predatory in his smile now that she couldn't believe she'd never noticed before. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Evidence in place. Meeting starting now. Stay alert. Sophia moved to the far end of the garden, keeping herself busy with pruning and weeding. But even at this distance, she could sense the tension emanating from the mansion. Through the large windows of the conference room, she could see figures moving about, gesturing animatedly. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. Need you to verify something immediately. My study. Come through the side door. Sophia hesitated. Something felt off about the message. Marcus had just told her to stay away from the house during the meeting, and he never texted her directly. All communications usually went through his assistant. As she stood trying to decide what to do, a movement caught her eye. Through the conference room windows, she could see Marcus still seated at the head of the board table, clearly deep in discussion. He wasn't in his study at all. Her heart began to race as she typed a quick message to Diana. "Something's wrong. Received suspicious text." The response was immediate. "Don't move. Security team en route." Sophia looked up from her phone to find James Cooper standing at the garden path entrance, his phone in his hand and a cold smile on his face. "Going somewhere, Sophia? I believe Marcus requested your presence in his study." Sophia's heart hammered in her chest as she stood face to face with James Cooper in the garden path. Years of handling difficult situations in her past life had taught her to remain outwardly calm, even as her mind raced through possible escape routes. "Mr. Cooper, I have some delicate pruning to finish before. Let's drop the pretense, shall we?" James's polished veneer had cracked, revealing something harder underneath. "You're much more than a simple gardener, aren't you? The question is, who are you working for? Global Dynamics? A competitor?" He took a step forward. "Or did Marcus put you up to this from the beginning?" Before Sophia could respond, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "She works for me, James. She always has. Just like you were supposed to." Marcus stood at the other end of the garden path, Diana Blackwood and 2 security officers flanking him. The board meeting had apparently taken an unexpected recess. James turned, maintaining his composure despite being caught off guard. "Marcus, shouldn't you be inside, preparing to lose your company?" "Interesting choice of words," Marcus replied, moving closer. "Especially since the board just voted unanimously to suspend the merger negotiations." He held up his tablet. "Would you like to explain these offshore accounts? Or perhaps the backdated communications with Global Dynamics? The board found them quite fascinating." Sophia watched as James's confident facade cracked slightly. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can." Diana stepped forward, her tablet displaying a series of documents. "Every transaction, every hidden communication, every secret meeting, it's all here, including your conversations in the garden, which you should have checked more carefully for security cameras before making those calls." James's face flushed with anger. "You had me under surveillance." "No," Marcus said quietly. "I trusted you completely. That was my only security camera, installed last year after the break-in next door. You just happened to choose that spot for your betrayal." "Betrayal?" James laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about betrayal? How about spending 20 years in your shadow? Everyone always praised Marcus Richardson's vision, Marcus's leadership, Marcus's integrity. Did you ever once consider that maybe I was tired of being the sidekick in the Marcus Richardson show?" The raw emotion in his voice made Sophia wince. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about something much more personal. "You were never my sidekick, James." Marcus's voice softened. "You were my partner, my best friend. Everything we built together." "Then why am I still introduced as Marcus Richardson's co-founder after 20 years? James demanded. "Why does every major decision require your final approval? Why did you get to be the face of Innovate Tech while I handled the details?" "Because you chose that role," Marcus replied. "Every time we had a media appearance, you stepped back. Every time we needed someone to handle negotiations, you volunteered for the behind-the-scenes work. I never pushed you into the shadows. You put yourself there." The truth of Marcus's words seemed to hit James like a physical blow. He looked around, suddenly aware of the growing audience. Several board members had emerged onto the terrace, watching the confrontation unfold. "It doesn't matter now." James straightened his tie, attempting to regain his composure. "The merger agreement has been terminated," Diana interrupted. "Global Dynamics withdrew their offer 20 minutes ago. Apparently, they don't appreciate being used as pawns in a corporate takeover attempt. And the board," Marcus added, "has some serious questions about those offshore accounts. The SEC might have questions too." James's face went pale. His carefully constructed plan was unraveling in front of him, and Sophia could see the moment he realized it was over. He turned to her, his expression a mixture of anger and grudging respect. "A gardener," he said softly. "I was undone by a gardener who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "No, James," Sophia found her voice. "You were undone by your own actions. I just happened to be the one who saw them." Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between James and Sophia. "The security team will escort you from the premises. Your access has been revoked, and the board has called an emergency session to discuss your position with the company." His voice cracked slightly. "Why, James? We could have talked about this. We could have found a way to address your concerns." "Because you would have given me what I wanted out of pity," James spat. "Just like you gave the gardener a job she was overqualified for. Your nobility was always your weakness, Marcus." As the security team moved to escort James away, he turned one last time to Sophia. "Well played, Ms. Martinez. I hope your conscience is clear." "Clearer than yours, Mr. Cooper," she replied steadily, watching as he was led away through the garden she had tended so carefully for the past 3 years. The gathered crowd began to disperse, board members heading back to their emergency session, leaving Sophia alone with Marcus and Diana in the suddenly quiet garden. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked softly. Sophia nodded, though her hands were still shaking slightly. I never expected it to end like this." "Neither did I." Marcus looked at the path where his oldest friend had just been led away. "Neither did I." The days following James's departure from the estate felt surreal. The gardens continued their natural cycle of growth and renewal, but everything else had changed. Security teams swept the property for any remaining sensitive documents, forensic accountants pored over financial records, and a steady stream of lawyers came and went through the mansion's front doors. Sophia tried to maintain her normal routine, but even the familiar task of tending to the roses felt different. The spot where she had first overheard James's phone call now held a weight of memory that she couldn't shake. The pool house, where everything had started, stood as a silent witness to how quickly life could change. One morning, about a week after the confrontation, Sophia arrived to find Marcus sitting alone on the terrace, staring at his phone. As she approached with her tools, she could see he was looking at an old photo. Him and James at their college graduation, arms thrown around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera. 20 years of friendship, he said without looking up. And I never saw it coming. Some CEO I am. Sophia set down her gardening basket. The best deceits often come from those closest to us, Mr. Richardson. It's not your fault for trusting your friend. Marcus, he corrected automatically, finally looking up. And thank you, Sophia. But I can't help wondering if I could have prevented this. If I had paid more attention, noticed his resentment earlier. Sometimes people hide their true feelings so well that seeing them would require us to be mind readers, Sophia offered, thinking of her own past experiences. And sometimes they don't even understand their feelings themselves until it's too late. Marcus nodded slowly, tucking his phone away. The board meeting yesterday was intense. We're announcing James's resignation today. The official story is that he's stepping down to pursue other opportunities. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Sophia had come to recognize as a sign of stress. The press will speculate, of course, but keeping this quiet protects the company. And despite everything, I can't bring myself to publicly destroy him. Because you're a good person, Sophia said simply, starting to arrange her gardening tools. Speaking of good people, Marcus straightened in his chair, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. The board and I have been discussing your role in all of this. Your actions saved Innovate Tech from a hostile takeover and protected thousands of jobs. Sophia felt her cheeks warm. I just did what was right. You did more than that. You showed exceptional judgment, integrity, and courage, which is why I'd like to offer you a new position. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase. How would you feel about becoming Innovate Tech's Director of Environmental Initiatives? Sophia's hands froze over her pruning shears. What? We've been talking about expanding our environmental responsibility programs for years, but it never seemed like the right time. Now, with all of this behind us, I want to refocus the company on making a positive impact. Your degree in environmental science, combined with your proven integrity and leadership qualities, makes you the perfect candidate. He opened the folder, revealing a formal job offer. The salary figure made Sophia's eyes widen. Of course, you'd have a team under you, a budget for sustainable projects, and the authority to implement green initiatives across all our facilities. Starting with these gardens, I think they could inspire similar spaces at all our locations. Sophia's mind raced. After 5 years of working jobs below her qualification level, here was an opportunity to combine her education with her passion for environmental stewardship. But something made her hesitate. The gardens, Marcus smiled, would still be under your oversight. You can hire and train a new head gardener, but these gardens will always be part of your domain. They're where you saved Innovate Tech, after all. Diana Blackwood appeared at the terrace doors. Sorry to interrupt, but the press release is ready for your review, Marcus. Be right there. He stood, leaving the folder on the table. Think about it, Sophia. The offer's yours if you want it. Oh, and regardless of your decision, the board insisted on this. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a check, a reward for her role in exposing the takeover attempt. The amount was more money than she'd ever seen in her life. I can't accept this, she started to protest. You can, and you will, Marcus said firmly. It's the least we can do. Take some time to think about everything. The future is yours to decide. As he walked away with Diana, Sophia sank into one of the terrace chairs, her world spinning slightly. The morning sun was burning away the marine layer, revealing a clear blue sky above the estate. In the garden below, the roses she had tended so carefully were beginning to bloom. Their faces turned toward the light. Her phone buzzed with a news alert, the official announcement of James Cooper's resignation from Innovate Tech. The article included a photo of him leaving the building yesterday, his face set in stone as he pushed through a crowd of reporters. She closed the alert, unable to reconcile that image with the charming man who had once complimented her gardening skills. A gentle breeze carried the scent of roses up from the garden, grounding her in the present moment. Sophia opened the job offer folder again, reading through the details more carefully this time. Director of Environmental Initiatives. The title seemed to shimmer with possibility. She thought about her journey. Leaving Mexico with a degree and a dream, facing disappointment and setbacks, finding unexpected purpose in these gardens, and now this moment of transformation. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt full of promise. The transition from head gardener to Director of Environmental Initiatives wasn't as smooth as Sophia had imagined. 2 weeks after accepting Marcus's offer, she found herself splitting time between the serene gardens she knew so well and the bustling corporate offices of Innovate Tech, where everything felt foreign and slightly intimidating. Her new office on the 14th floor offered a spectacular view of the bay, but Sophia often found herself looking down at the carefully landscaped grounds below, missing the feel of soil between her fingers. Today, however, she had something more pressing on her mind, her first major presentation to the board of directors. The implementation timeline looks solid, Claire said, reviewing Sophia's presentation slides. Marcus's former assistant had become an invaluable ally, helping Sophia navigate the corporate world. But you might want to lead with the cost savings projections. The board loves numbers. Sophia nodded, adjusting her blazer nervously. The outfit still felt like a costume, so different from her comfortable gardening clothes. I just hope they take me seriously. Last time they saw me, I was trimming hedges. Last time they saw you, you were saving the company from a hostile takeover, Claire corrected with a smile. Trust me, they're taking you very seriously. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered, carrying a small potted plant. A gift for your new office, he said, placing it on the windowsill. Japanese peace lily. Thrives in indoor environments and helps purify the air. I thought it might help you feel more at home up here. Sophia touched one of the lily's leaves gently. Thank you, Marcus. I was just reviewing the presentation for tomorrow. About that, he sat on the edge of her desk, something he'd never done when she was his gardener. The shifting dynamic between them was still something she was adjusting to. I wanted to give you a heads up. We have a new board member joining us tomorrow, taking James's seat. Sophia's stomach tightened at the mention of James. The media speculation about his departure had finally died down, but his absence still felt like a raw wound in the company's fabric. Anyone I should be worried about? Actually, it's Diana Blackwood. Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. The private investigator who had helped expose James's scheme had become a trusted advisor to Marcus in the aftermath. The board felt we needed someone with her expertise in corporate security and strategy, Marcus explained. And I trust her judgment. She's already reviewed your green initiative proposal. She's very impressed. After Marcus left, Sophia spent the afternoon finalizing her presentation. Her proposal was ambitious, transforming all Innovate Tech facilities into model sustainable campuses, starting with the creation of rooftop gardens and solar installations. The projected costs were significant, but the long-term benefits, both environmental and financial, were compelling. That evening, instead of heading home, Sophia found herself drawn to the Richardson Estate Gardens. She had hired a new head gardener, Maria, who was doing an excellent job, but Sophia still liked to check in when she could. The roses were blooming magnificently under Maria's care. As she walked the familiar paths in her business attire, Sophia reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. Her bank account now held more money than she'd ever dreamed of, thanks to the board's reward. She'd moved from her tiny apartment to a comfortable condo, closer to the office. Her mother in Mexico couldn't stop crying with pride during their weekly video calls. Yet something still nagged at her. Success had come at the cost of destroying someone else's dreams. James's betrayal had been wrong, but his pain had been real. The memory of his face as he was led away still haunted her. "I thought I might find you here." Sophia turned to find Diana Blackwood walking up the garden path, her elegant business suit looking somehow more natural in this setting than Sophia's felt. "Getting some last-minute inspiration for tomorrow's presentation?" Diana asked. "Something like that." Sophia gestured to the gardens around them. "This place changed my life in ways I never expected. Now I have the chance to create spaces like this for thousands of employees. And you're worried you won't be able to live up to that opportunity?" Diana's perception was sharp as ever. "Partly," Sophia admitted. "But I'm also worried about becoming like James, so focused on proving myself that I lose sight of what really matters." Diana was quiet for a moment, studying the roses. "You know what the difference is between you and James? He saw Marcus's success as a shadow that diminished him. You see opportunities as a chance to lift others up alongside you. I've read your proposal. Every initiative includes training programs for maintenance staff, educational opportunities for employees, community engagement plans." She turned to face Sophia directly. "The board isn't just investing in green technology tomorrow. They're investing in your vision of corporate responsibility, and based on what I've seen, that's a very wise investment." The setting sun cast long shadows across the garden, but for the first time all day, Sophia felt her anxiety lifting. She had found her path forward, not despite her time as a gardener, but because of it. She understood now that growth, whether in gardens or in life, required patience, care, and most importantly, strong roots. "Thank you, Diana, for everything." "Save your thanks for after tomorrow's presentation," Diana smiled. "Though I have a feeling you won't need luck. Just be yourself, the woman who tends to growth in all its forms." As they walked back toward the house, Sophia paused to deadhead a rosebush out of habit. Diana watched with amusement. "Some habits die hard," Sophia said, slightly embarrassed. "Don't apologize for staying connected to your roots," Diana replied. "They're what make you unique in the corporate world. Now, want to do a final run-through of your presentation? I have some insights about the board members that might help." Sophia nodded, taking one last look at the garden that had started her journey. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready to face them, armed with both her education and the wisdom she'd gained among the roses. The Innovate Tech boardroom fell silent as Sophia concluded her presentation. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the faces of the board members as they processed her ambitious proposal. Sophia remained standing, her heart pounding but her voice steady as she addressed the room. As you can see, implementing these sustainable initiatives across all Innovate Tech facilities will require significant initial investment. However, the projected return over 5 years, both in cost savings and positive environmental impact, makes this a compelling opportunity for our company to lead by example in corporate sustainability. Marcus sat at the head of the table, his expression carefully neutral, though Sophia caught a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Diana Blackwood, seated to his right in what had once been James's chair, was nodding slightly as she reviewed the numbers on her tablet. Ms. Martinez, one of the older board members, leaned forward, his tone skeptical. "While your presentation is impressive, we're talking about $100 million investment. That's a lot of money to spend on gardens and solar panels during uncertain economic times." Sophia had anticipated this concern. She clicked to her final slide, revealing a letter of intent from one of Silicon Valley's largest venture capital firms, known for their focus on environmental sustainability. "Actually, we wouldn't be spending that money alone. Green Future Ventures has reviewed our proposal and offered to partner with us, matching our investment dollar for dollar. They see this as an opportunity to create a model for corporate environmental responsibility that could be replicated across the tech industry." A murmur of interest rippled through the room. Diana's eyebrows raised slightly. This was new information that Sophia had kept as her final card. "How did you secure their interest?" another board member asked. "The same way I learned about James Cooper's plans," Sophia replied with a small smile. "By paying attention to the gardens. Their CEO, Sarah Chen, visits her sister who lives next door to the estate. She often admired our grounds during her visits, so I arranged to give her a tour. When she learned about our sustainability initiative, she immediately saw the potential." Marcus leaned forward. "And you developed this connection without mentioning it to anyone?" "I wanted to be certain before bringing it to the board." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Just as I needed to be certain about what I overheard in the gardens before coming to you about James." A moment of charged silence followed her words. The memory of James's betrayal still hung heavy in this room, but Sophia had just demonstrated how the same circumstances could yield positive results when handled with integrity. Diana was the first to speak. "I've reviewed the security implications of this partnership. Green Future Ventures checks out completely. Their reputation for environmental innovation is unmatched, and their financial backing would provide an extra layer of legitimacy to our initiatives." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Well, Ms. Martinez, you've certainly given us a lot to consider. If there are no other questions," he looked around the room, "then I move we put this to a vote." Sophia held her breath as hands were raised. One by one, the board members signaled their approval. When the final count was tallied, the chairman smiled. "Congratulations, Ms. Martinez. Your green initiative has been approved unanimously. I believe this marks the beginning of a new era for Innovate Tech." The room erupted in congratulatory comments and questions about implementation timelines. As board members gathered their things, several approached Sophia to shake her hand and offer their support. She noticed Marcus hanging back, waiting until the room had cleared before approaching her. "Sarah Chen," he said, shaking his head with a smile. "I've been trying to get a meeting with her for years, and you arranged it over garden tours. Sometimes the best business deals start with a shared appreciation for beauty," Sophia replied, beginning to gather her presentation materials. "I learned that from watching you, actually. The way you always took time to notice the gardens, to appreciate the small details. It taught me that success isn't just about big moves and power plays. You're going to change this company, Sophia," Marcus said softly. "Maybe even more than James tried to destroy it." The mention of James still brought a shadow to Marcus's face, but it was lighter now, tempered by time and new possibilities. Sophia touched his arm gently. "Change doesn't have to destroy what came before. Sometimes it just helps things grow in new directions." Diana approached them, her tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but Green Future Ventures is already reaching out. They want to schedule a formal meeting to discuss partnership details." She gave Sophia an appraising look. "You played that perfectly, holding back the partnership news until the end." Sophia smiled. "I learned from the best. Your investigation techniques taught me a lot about timing and strategic revelation of information." "Speaking of timing," Marcus interjected, "we should celebrate. Dinner at the estate tonight? Maria has been telling me the night-blooming jasmine is particularly beautiful this week." "Actually," Sophia said, "I was thinking we could have dinner in our new rooftop garden. It's just a prototype, but the sunset view is spectacular, and the organic vegetable beds are already producing their first harvest." Marcus and Diana exchanged surprised looks. "You already started building?" Diana asked. I had faith in the board's vision, Sophia replied. Just like you had faith in me when I was just a gardener with an overheard conversation. As they rode the elevator to the rooftop, Sophia felt a profound sense of rightness. The path that had led her here, from immigrant with a dream to gardener to corporate executive, hadn't been straight or easy, but every step had taught her valuable lessons about growth, patience, and the importance of staying true to one's roots. 6 months after the board's approval, Innovate Tech's transformation was in full bloom. The corporate headquarters had become a showcase of sustainable architecture, with its rooftop garden serving as a model for similar installations across the company's facilities. Sophia stood in what had once been a stark concrete expanse, now transformed into a thriving green space where employees gathered for lunch, informal meetings, or simply a moment of peace during hectic workdays. The Wall Street Journal wants to do a feature on our green initiative, Claire said, joining Sophia among the raised vegetable beds. They're calling it the Garden Revolution in Silicon Valley. Other companies are starting to follow our lead. Sophia smiled, remembering her first days as a gardener at the Richardson estate. Have you seen the latest employee satisfaction surveys? Up 30% since we implemented the environmental programs, Claire confirmed, checking her tablet. The wellness programs in garden spaces are the most cited improvements. Oh, and the sustainable cafeteria using our rooftop produce is a huge hit. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah Chen, CEO of Green Future Ventures, accompanied by Marcus and Diana. The partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations, with other major tech companies now approaching them to replicate their success. Sophia, Sarah called out warmly. The Singapore team just sent over their preliminary results. The vertical gardens you designed for their new facility have reduced their cooling costs by 40%. They want you to consult on their expansion plans. Before Sophia could respond, a familiar figure approached their group. Maria, the head gardener she had hired for the Richardson estate, was carrying a potted plant. Ms. Martinez, the first roses from our cultivation program are ready, Maria announced proudly. The program, which trained former gardeners and maintenance staff for specialized environmental roles, had been one of Sophia's first initiatives. Perfect timing. Sophia took the pot, presenting it to Sarah. This is a new hybrid we've developed. Drought-resistant, perfect for corporate installations with a continuous blooming cycle. We're calling it the Future Rose. Sarah examined the deep purple bloom with obvious appreciation. Beautiful and sustainable, just like everything else you've created here, Sophia. The board wants to double our investment in the partnership. We're thinking of creating a separate division focused entirely on corporate environmental transformations. Marcus, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Actually, we've been discussing something similar. Sophia, would you join us in the conference room? There's something we'd like to propose. The group moved to the glass-walled conference room that overlooked both the rooftop garden and the city beyond. The view never failed to remind Sophia of how far she had come from her first days in America. We want to create a new subsidiary company, Marcus began once they were seated. Innovate Tech Green Solutions. The demand for our sustainable corporate programs has grown beyond anything we anticipated. Other companies don't just want our technology anymore. They want our environmental expertise. Diana pulled up a presentation on the room's displays. The security and compliance frameworks are already in place. We've had inquiries from companies across 4 continents, and we want you to lead it, Sophia, Marcus finished, as CEO. Sophia sat back, stunned. Me? But I've only been in corporate leadership for 6 months. And in that time, you've transformed not just Innovate Tech, but the entire conversation around corporate environmental responsibility, Sarah added. Green Future Ventures would be honored to continue our partnership under your leadership. You've already proven yourself, Diana pointed out. The board trusts you implicitly, not just because you saved the company once, but because you've shown them a new way forward. Sophia looked out at the garden she had created, watching employees stroll along the paths between meetings. Below, she could see construction underway on the new solar installation, another piece of her comprehensive sustainability plan. I never imagined this when I was tending roses at the estate, she said softly. No, Marcus smiled. You imagined something bigger. That's why you're perfect for this role. You see possibilities where others see obstacles. You understand that true growth requires nurturing, patience, and integrity. Just like gardening, Maria added with a knowing smile. Sophia stood and walked to the window, thinking about her journey. She thought about the scared but determined young woman who had left Mexico with a degree and a dream, about the gardener who had chosen to speak up when she discovered wrongdoing, about the executive she had become. But most of all, she thought about growth, how it came in unexpected ways, how it required both courage and careful tending, and how the smallest seeds of change could blossom into something extraordinary. She turned back to the group, her decision made. "I'll do it, but on one condition." She smiled at Maria. "The new company headquarters needs a garden, a real one, not just for show. Something to remind us of where we came from and what we can become." Marcus laughed. "I wouldn't expect anything less," although his expression grew more serious. "We should discuss the details of your new position. The responsibilities will be significant." "I'm ready," Sophia said, her voice firm. After all, every garden starts with a single seed and a lot of faith. As the group began discussing logistics, Sophia's phone buzzed with a news alert. She glanced at it briefly, then did a double take. The headline read, "James Cooper launches environmental consulting firm." For a moment she felt a flutter of concern, but it passed quickly. She had learned that the best way to handle competition was to focus on growth rather than conflict. Looking around the table at her trusted colleagues, now friends, Sophia felt a deep sense of gratitude. The garden had given her more than just a job. It had given her a purpose, a platform for change, and a chance to help others grow alongside her. 1 year to the day after Sophia had overheard that fateful conversation in the Richardson Estate Gardens, she stood at a podium in Innovate Tech's main auditorium, addressing a crowd of over 1,000 people. The launch of Innovate Tech Green Solutions had drawn environmental leaders, corporate executives, and media from around the world. "When I first came to America," Sophia began, her voice steady and confident, "I had a degree in environmental science and a dream of making a difference. What I didn't have was a plan for how to make that dream reality. Sometimes the path to our greatest achievements isn't the one we carefully plotted, but the one that opens up unexpectedly before us." She gestured to the massive screen behind her, which showed before and after images of transformed corporate campuses across the globe. What had once been stark concrete and glass structures were now living buildings, wrapped in vertical gardens and crowned with productive green spaces. In our first year, Innovate Tech Green Solutions has partnered with over 50 major corporations to revolutionize their approach to sustainability. But this isn't just about beautiful gardens or energy efficiency. It's about changing corporate culture from the ground up. The presentation shifted to show clusters of employees working in rooftop gardens, children from local schools learning about sustainable agriculture in corporate greenhouses, and community members participating in urban farming initiatives. Every employee who tends a garden bed during their lunch break, every executive who holds meetings in a rooftop green space, every community member who participates in our urban farming programs, they're all part of a larger transformation. We're not just changing buildings, we're changing mindsets. In the front row, Marcus beamed with pride. Beside him sat Diana Blackwood, who had become both a mentor and friend to Sophia over the past year. Sarah Chen from Green Future Ventures nodded approvingly as Sophia presented their latest joint venture statistics. Our partner companies report an average 40% reduction in energy costs, 60% improvement in employee satisfaction, and significant increases in community engagement. But perhaps most importantly, we're proving that corporate success and environmental responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. They're mutually reinforcing. Sophia paused, her eyes finding Maria in the audience. Her former replacement as head gardener now led Innovate Tech's groundbreaking agricultural training program, which had already helped hundreds of maintenance workers and gardeners advance into specialized environmental roles. A year ago, I was a gardener who made a choice to speak up when I witnessed something wrong. Today, I stand before you as the CEO of a company dedicated to speaking up for our planet's future. But in many ways, I'm still that gardener, and the lessons I learned tending roses still guide every decision I make. The screen behind her changed to show the Richardson Estate Gardens, where everything had begun. These gardens taught me that growth requires patience, that beauty needs protection, and that the smallest seeds can yield the most extraordinary results. They also taught me that sometimes the most important thing we can do is tend to what's right in front of us, while keeping an eye on the horizon. In the middle of the audience, Sophia spotted Claire, who had become her chief of staff at the new company. Beside her sat a familiar face that made Sophia's heart skip a beat: James Cooper. He had accepted her invitation to the launch, his first public appearance at an Innovate Tech event since his departure. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small, complicated nod. "We stand at a crossroads," Sophia continued, turning back to the audience. "The challenges our planet faces are immense, but so are the opportunities for positive change. Every corporate campus we transform becomes a living laboratory for sustainability. Every garden we plant becomes a classroom for future environmental leaders. Every partnership we forge becomes a blueprint for how business can thrive while nurturing our planet." She gestured to the various corporate leaders in the audience. "Many of you are here today because you see the future we're building. You understand that sustainable business isn't just about survival. It's about evolution. It's about growing something new from the best of what came before." The presentation screen filled with an aerial view of their latest project, a massive urban renewal initiative that would transform abandoned industrial spaces into green technology parks surrounded by community gardens and sustainable housing. "This is just the beginning," Sophia said, her voice filled with quiet conviction. "A garden is never truly finished. It grows, it changes, it faces challenges, and it adapts. The same is true for our mission. Every success plants the seeds for new opportunities. Every challenge teaches us how to grow stronger." As she concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Sophia felt a profound sense of completion. The path that had led her here had been unexpected, but every step, from immigrant with a dream to gardener to corporate whistleblower to CEO, had prepared her for this moment. After the presentation, as the audience mingled during the reception in the rooftop garden, James approached her. They hadn't spoken since his departure from Innovate Tech. "You've built something remarkable, something I never could have envisioned when I—" He trailed off, then started again. "Your environmental consulting firm invitation. I'd like to discuss it further." Sophia studied him. The sharp edges of ambition had been softened by something that looked like wisdom. "Growth comes in many forms," she replied. "Sometimes we have to lose our way to find a better path." He nodded, understanding the deeper meaning in her words. As he moved away through the crowd, Marcus appeared at her side. "That was generous of you," he said, watching James's retreating figure. "Offering to partner with his new firm." Sophia smiled. "The gardens taught me another lesson. Even after the hardest winter, spring always returns. Everyone deserves a chance to bloom again." 5 years had passed since Sophia Martinez first set foot in the Richardson Estate Gardens. On this bright spring morning, she stood in the same spot where she had once overheard a conversation that changed everything. But now she wasn't alone. A group of students from local universities gathered around her, eager to learn about the corporate sustainability revolution that had begun in these very gardens. "And this," Sophia gestured to the meticulously maintained rose garden, "is where our story began. Not with a grand vision or a corporate strategy, but with a simple choice to do what was right." The students, all participants in Innovate Tech Green Solutions' prestigious environmental leadership program, scribbled notes and snapped photos. Among them were scholarship recipients from Mexico, reminder of how far the ripples of change had spread. "Ms. Martinez," one student raised her hand, "how did you find the courage to speak up when you discovered the takeover attempt? Weren't you afraid of losing everything?" Sophia smiled, remembering her younger self's fears and doubts. "Of course I was afraid. But these gardens had taught me something important, that growth requires both courage and conviction. Sometimes we have to prune away what's harmful to allow what's healthy to flourish." The tour continued through the estate grounds, which had become a living museum of sustainable landscaping techniques. Each corner told a story. the herb garden where Sophia had made her final decision to speak up, the pool house where she had first overheard James's plans, the greenhouse where Marcus had first offered her the chance to transform everything. Today, Innovate Tech Green Solutions has partnered with over 500 companies worldwide, Sophia explained, as they reached the mansion's newly installed butterfly garden. But more importantly, we've created a network of environmental leaders who are transforming corporate culture from within. She pointed to the sustainable technology integrated seamlessly into the estate's classic architecture. Solar panels that doubled as artistic installations, living walls that regulated temperature naturally, and water recycling systems that had reduced consumption by 80%. The Richardson estate was just the beginning. Now, every corporate campus we touch becomes a seed for further change. Our partnership program with James Cooper's environmental firm has helped spread these innovations even faster than we anticipated. The mention of James brought a moment of reflection. Their professional reconciliation had surprised many, but Sophia had recognized in his new environmental venture a genuine desire for redemption. His expertise in corporate structures, combined with her vision for sustainability, had created a powerful force for change. As if summoned by her thoughts, a familiar figure appeared on the mansion's terrace. Marcus Richardson, his hair now touched with distinguished gray, waved to the group. Beside him stood Diana Blackwood, who had become chairperson of Innovate Tech's board after the previous chairman's retirement. "Mr. Richardson still lives here?" a student asked. "This estate isn't just his home," Sophia explained. "It's our company's living laboratory. Every new sustainability innovation we develop is tested here first. And yes," she smiled, "he still gets his hands dirty in the garden sometimes. He says it helps him think clearly." The tour concluded in the rooftop garden that had inspired hundreds of similar installations across the globe. Here Maria, now Director of Agricultural Innovation, was conducting a workshop on urban farming techniques for another group of corporate executives. 5 years ago, Sophia addressed the students one final time, I was a gardener with an environmental science degree, trying to find my place in a new country. Today, I lead a company that's changing how corporations interact with the environment. But in my heart, I'm still that gardener. Every decision I make, every project we undertake, is rooted in the lessons I learned here. She gestured to the thriving ecosystem around them. Look at this garden. It's not just beautiful, it's productive, sustainable, and accessible to everyone who works here. This is the future we're building, one garden at a time. Corporate success doesn't have to come at the expense of environmental responsibility. In fact, the two can nurture each other, just like the different species in a healthy ecosystem. After the students departed, Sophia remained in the garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Marcus joined her, both of them comfortable in the silence of old friends. I got the latest reports, he finally said. Our model has been adopted by every major tech company in Silicon Valley. The EU is making it a standard for new corporate developments. Even traditional industries are coming around. Sophia nodded, touching a rose petal gently. And to think it all started here, with a conversation overheard in a garden. No, Marcus corrected her kindly. It started with a person who understood that true growth means nurturing not just plants, but principles. You didn't just save my company, Sophia. You helped it evolve into something better. As the evening settled over the estate, Sophia took one last walk through the gardens she had once tended. Everything had changed, yet the fundamental truths remained the same. Growth requires patience, change brings opportunity, and even the smallest actions can yield extraordinary results. A new group of gardeners was arriving for the evening shift, each of them students in the company's environmental training program. They greeted Sophia with respect, but also with the easy familiarity of shared purpose. In their eyes, she saw the same dreams that had brought her to America years ago, dreams that were now blooming into reality. The gardens of the Richardson estate had transformed from a simple workplace into a symbol of corporate environmental responsibility, from a place of betrayal into a source of redemption, from one person's vision into a movement that was changing the world. And somewhere, in every corporate garden they created, in every sustainable campus they designed, in every life they touched, New seeds of change were taking root, promising an eternal spring of possibility.